Hello, everyone. This is Jumi Olawale. Welcome to Life, Love, and Therapy podcast. I would like to let you guys know about an upcoming women's conference, and it will be taking place on the 21st of September. I'm going to have amazing women speakers that will be covering topics such as how to build resilience and take care of ourselves using yoga and mindfulness techniques. We're going to be talking about boundary setting, perfectionism and vulnerability, balancing our career, motherhood, and marriage, sex, intimacy, desire, and libido, and also how to move through transitions when we feel like other people seems to be thriving and we just feel like we're not progressing. I can't wait for you to be in attendance and listen to the amazing women that are going to be talking at this conference. So you can get your tickets as soon as possible by going to eventbrite.com and searching for Embrace the Mess Women's Conference. You can also find the tickets on my Facebook page at Jumi Olawale Therapy and Counseling, as well as if you go on my Instagram page, you can also find it at Jumi Olawale the Therapist. Welcome to Life, Love, and Therapy. I am Jumi Olawale. This show is about learning tips, advice, and ideas about how to improve our lives and relationships from the viewpoint of a therapist. It is so nice to have you, Brendan, on the show, Life, Love, and Therapy. And I am so excited to have you introduce yourself to the audience. Brendan, can you please tell the audience about yourself, what you do, and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brendan Mahan, and I am an ADHD coach, consultant, and speaker. And I also run a podcast called ADHD Essentials. And ADHD Essentials is really what I use for everything. And I primarily am helping adults, kids, and families more effectively manage ADHD in their lives so that they suffer the side effects and the symptoms of ADHD a little bit less and find success a little bit more.
I have Brendan here to talk to us about what it is like for men in this culture where there's a lot of pressure to succeed. So Brendan, talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be a man in this culture, especially around the matrix and definition of success.
Yeah, so success is kind of narrowly defined for men in terms of you're making a lot of money. You can lift big, heavy things and have bulging muscles. Oh, and you've slept with lots of beautiful women. That's kind of the definition for success for men in our culture. And I am terrible at all of those things, except for picking up big, heavy things. I'm actually pretty good at picking up heavy stuff, but I don't have like the bulging muscles that you would think would come with that. I kind of define success for myself in a lot of ways. Once I started doing that, I was able to meet with success more effectively because I didn't feel like I was scrambling and trying to prove myself all the time. Instead, I was like, oh no, I can define what success is. And that lets me play to my strengths and also lets me a little bit get past that imposter syndrome that we can so easily suffer from. Because in my house, we're pretty gender flipped in a lot of ways. My wife is a scientist, so she makes more money than I do and deals with science. And I'm an ADHD coach, so I'm sort of doing the social emotional stuff. And I used to be a teacher. So in a lot of ways, I'm kind of the nurturer person, and she's more of the like executive function person, right? Like she's the one who pays the bills. We both make the money, but she pays the bills. If I had to pay the bills, we would be homeless because I have ADHD and I'm going to forget to pay the mortgage. I'm going to forget to pay the water bill. It's just going to happen. And she knows it. And so we navigate it that way. And in a lot of relationships, the social stuff tends to be driven by the wife. In ours, I tend to drive the social stuff. I'm the one reaching out and connecting to people and helping to make sure that we have friends coming over or we're going to their house or parties and that kind of stuff. But my wife is the one who's like, hey, make sure you mow the lawn if people are going to come over. And so in that way, there's a little bit of sort of gender norm flipping that happens, at least in our family. And all of that kind of reflects oddly on success. I get a ton of credit for being an amazing dad. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm not an amazing dad, because I am. But I get more credit than I deserve, because if a woman, any woman, was doing what I'm doing, it wouldn't be impressive.
Wow.
It would be like, hey, you're like an above average mom, but we're not going to be blown away by the fact that you took your kids to the playground when they were 5. And like, I don't want credit for taking my kids to the playground when they were 5. I don't deserve credit for that. I might deserve credit for how I managed them and how I navigated challenges that came up. Maybe I did it in a way that was kinder or more effective than it might have otherwise been. But the simple fact that I took them to a playground should not be impressive. That's not success to me. But when it comes to parenting, the bar for success for men is so low that I find it offensive. And then when it comes to like businessy sort of breadwinning kind of stuff, the bar for success is really high, such that lots of men don't feel like they're successful even though they are.
Wow. You packed a lot into that. So let's start from where you started redefining your own idea of success. How did you get here? What was that journey like for you? Let's start there.
Sure. I had the worst year of my life. It was like maybe 2013. In that year, my career as a teacher ended. My mom got sick, my mom died, and my car burned down. All in 1 year. Yeah, it was a little bit intense. And I was a mess. If I had just gotten in a car accident and that was what totaled my car, I probably would have fallen into a much more significant depression and might have even contemplated or executed suicide. But that's not what happened. What happened was my car burned down. So I had a 50-foot pyre of flame coming off the front of my car on the side of the highway in Massachusetts. And I just didn't know what to do with that. But it was so epic that I decided I had to find a meaning in it. And I decided that I had to stop looking at the awful and start looking at the awesome.
Whoa, that was so good. Stop looking at the awful and start looking at the awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And so as a practical application of that, on Facebook every day, I would post today's awesome and then write whatever the awesome was. And I've continued that practice. I don't quite get to it every day anymore, but I continue that practice. And sometimes the awesome is pancakes or a new lawnmower, like nothing that exciting. And sometimes it's speaking on the stage at the International Conference on ADHD. Like, it's kind of broad what I define as awesome, because every day's best stuff is going to be a little bit different. But I learned how to find the awesome in the awful as well, because anything awesome that happens is great, but you also have to be able to find what's awesome about something that's bad. So my car burning down gave me this reframe. My mom passing away meant that my family came together in a way that was new, and that sort of connection continues. It also meant that I'm seeing my dad in a new light. That's got some value for me, understanding him a little better. So that sort of started my reframe in general. And then I also, I went back to school. I got a master's degree in school guidance counseling. So I have one in education and one in school guidance counseling. And started to see that those jobs are hard to get, but I was also dabbling in the ADHD stuff and ended up doing the ADHD stuff. For me, I feel a much more significant sense of accomplishment when I present to a room full of people and I teach them about ADHD and help them improve their lives or help them feel some hope around helping their kid or helping themselves than I do from, I made $100,000 last year. Like, the money that I make gives me more of a feeling of justification for all of the helping that I've been doing. Like, see, I accomplished something. Because helping people is a little ethereal. It's a little hard to grab and pin down. But I made this much money in the course of helping people. That makes it feel a little more concrete for me. But even that perspective, I recognize, is growing out of the importance of making money for men in terms of how to define success. If that cultural pressure wasn't there, I don't think I'd care how much money I made.
as you were trying to help people and transforming the way that you approach life and your philosophy, how did you deal with the imposter syndrome?
That was hard. Some of it was that I was learning about the imposter syndrome as I was doing it, so I was able to recognize it, right? I was able to recognize that I was judging someone else's middle against my beginning.
Hmm.
And that concept helped a lot. And as I sort of moved through my career as an ADHD coach and as a speaker and a podcaster and all that stuff, and I met with success in terms of the people I'd helped or the people who are now reaching out to me and asking me to do a workshop for them or to work with their kid or themselves. As those successes started to come forward, I kind of just realized I was good at what I did and got to sit back on the fact that I'm providing value to people and I'm legitimately helping them. And that kind of let me skip the imposter syndrome or at least mitigate its effects.
What would you say, Brandon, to a guy that is like, I get that whole new philosophy that you have and how you've been able to work through the imposter syndrome, but my story is a little bit different. I've never been able to find success in business. I've never been able to find success in marriage or in relationships. So what am I supposed to do in terms of redefining the idea of success? What would you say to someone like that?
I would say that I spent 2 years as a full-time grad student, part-time stay-at-home dad, sort of tiny little itty bitty time ADHD coach, by which I mean maybe I had one client at a time. So I've been there where you're not feeling like a success and you don't feel like you're contributing. And my wife was making all the money and I wasn't bringing in any money. I was just spending it. I know what that feels like because I've been down that road. And I would say to that person that they're probably wrong. They probably are contributing something. They probably do have successes and strengths. They're just not looking at them in the way that they need to. I had to reframe what I contributed to the family when it wasn't money. And the fact that I'm not that great at cleaning up anyway, because I just have ADHD and I forget to do the dishes. And I had to start going like, yeah, but what I am doing well is I'm really doing a great job of taking care of my kids and making sure that they're having enriching activities and feeling connected and feeling safe and feeling like they matter. But in the course of doing that, I had to lower my standards for a little while so that I could meet them.
Wow.
And then once I met them and I started to find trust in myself and be able to trust myself again, then I could raise them. And once I met that next layer of goals and standards, then I raised them again. It's about reducing what it is that you're trying to do. Set fewer goals and set clearer, more attainable goals so that you can rekindle your trust in yourself.
So you were sharing earlier that in your household, the gender roles are flipped. What about the men that are around you? There was one time I heard someone say that men don't really care about what women say. They care about what other men think. They care about what other men say. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So how have you been able to adjust to that? Or the kind of men that surround you, is there pressure or are they supportive that it hasn't made any difference?
This is where I get credit from the male side of stuff. And even from women too. This is where sort of the male success stuff, I get to win a little bit, I guess. I make enough money, so that's okay. I'm not like the unemployed schlub on the couch anymore. I am a father and I do parent actively. I'm not someone who's going to say I'm babysitting the kids. Like, nah, it's a 3-guy day. We're hanging out. I have identical twin sons who are 10. So 3-guy days are when it's the 3 of us. Yeah. And so you get credit for that, right? Like even just now, whoa, identical twin sons. I just got credit that to me I don't deserve because it's just they're my kids and I'm just being their dad. That's all. I don't know any different. So there's that. Also, I started my own business and that is sort of along the lines of that corporate boardroom stuff, except I did it on my own, which even that isn't really true because there are plenty of people who helped me out to get where I am. Not the least of which is my wife, who was able to make enough money that I could take this risk. And so you get a little bit of credit for that. I'm a professional speaker. I get credit for that because not a lot of people can do that. It's a little embarrassing and scary for folks, but I do it and I do it well. And so I played to my strengths. I steered into my strengths, and that allowed me to adjust to some of that guy stuff and get some of that male judgment that was acceptance kind of stuff. But also, I recognize toxic masculinity when I see it, and I just don't give it the time of day or the validity that it tries to create. Like, if you're going to limit what I can do because I'm a guy, then you're no better than when you're limiting what women can do because they're women. So stop it. I can be an amazing dad. That's okay. I can bake if I want to. None of those things should be weird. I mean, if I gave birth, that'd be a little odd. But beyond that, it's not a thing, right? Like, I'm just a guy and I happen to be better at the social emotional side of stuff. I happen to be better at the nurturing side of stuff, and that's okay. Those are my skills. It also means I'm a really good leader. For the past half of school year, a little more, I've been the interim part-time principal of a private Islamic school in my town because I was consulting with them, and the principal was going out on maternity leave. And she said, "What do you think? Do you want to fill in while I'm out?" And I said,
wow.
"Sure." Yeah. I've been really busy because it's hard to do that and also be an entrepreneur who's running an ADHD coaching company. But I pulled it off. Like, I managed to survive the school year and make that happen. It means that sometimes I'm working hard, sometimes I'm really busy, but I don't have to sweat the judgment because sometimes we judge men based on how busy they are. So I get a little bit of victory there. And if I'm really stuck, I'm a brown belt in Kempo. So with men, it often how good you are boils down to violence, which is stupid, but it's a thing. And so if I feel like I'm stuck with a person and this guy's just going to be a jerk the whole time, I might bring that up, and then they quiet down, or they at least feel like they can connect with me, and they're like, "Oh yeah," like, yeah, this is the least important thing that I do because everything else is facing outward in terms of helping other people, and this is just a thing I do for me to stay in shape and to master in art.
So let me take you back to the time, 2 years when you were trying to build your business. You were a stay-at-home dad, and it was your wife that was making the money, and you were taking care of the kids. Around that time, did you think about, man, am I being successful as a man? Did you ever have those internal turmoil during that period of time?
Yeah, of course I did. I'm a former camp counselor. Like, working with kids is a core part of my identity. So being home with my kids was like, this is the best. But I absolutely struggled a lot with feeling like a failure, feeling like a loser, feeling like I wasn't doing the thing I was supposed to be doing. My wife is making all the money. I remember one day I was at the mall and I saw a coat. So I'm a geek, and it was Wolverine's costume as a coat. And I was like, that's really awesome. And I will probably never see that again. And I really want that coat. And I also happen to need a coat, but it's $40 or whatever. And feeling like I can't buy that coat, and the guilt about I'm not employed, I'm not making enough money to even pretend that I can buy that coat. And I mentioned it to my wife more out of like a, hey, look, I didn't do the stupid thing and spend the money. Almost in like a, probably in a little bit of a martyr way, maybe. Like, this is making me feel bad all over the place. I have to share it, but also I feel like I should get credit for realizing I shouldn't get this, I guess. All of which is coming from guilt and shame, right? Like, all of that is coming from guilt and shame. And my wife was just like, go buy it. And it was simultaneously a relief and also guilt and shame. So wow. I have that coat. It's hanging up upstairs. I no longer feel guilty and shameful about it. But even her saying, just go buy it, made me feel a little reduced, like my mom, you know what I mean? Or like I got permission to buy the thing. Not quite mom, but you get what I mean.
Yes.
That was a really hard period of time for me, but I wouldn't trade it for the world because I learned so much about myself during that time. And I learned so much about the struggles that my clients are going through. I'm working with a guy right now who's in a very similar position to this one that I was in, and I'm helping him get out of it. And I wouldn't be able to do as good of a job working with him if I hadn't lived it myself.
Yes, because you can call out those emotions, you can call out those thought processes that have, that can hold you back and get you trapped in that space.
Right. And as a man, I'm allowed to talk about that stuff with other men in a way that women can't.
Right.
I was talking to a peer earlier who happens to be African American, and he was like, he could talk to his African American clients in a way that a white clinician would not be able to.
That is true.
Because there's all this cultural subtext that with a white clinician, your African American and Black clients kind of have to explain it to you so you understand what it is, and then maybe you can go somewhere. But he can skip like 3 months of work because he's already there. He already gets it. And so me having that experience lets me skip probably not 3 months, probably like a week or two. I'm not going to pretend it's comparable to being a minority in America, but I get to skip a little bit.
So I want to ask about the role of support and community around this, because in this country right now, there is a real issue around loneliness and men and loneliness in particular. So as you went through everything that you have been through that you shared with us, how did the people around you make a difference? Did you have men that were supportive, that were cheering you on, or was it just your wife?
It was my wife. It was my classmates. I mean, I kind of had the benefit of going to school for counseling. So I was with people who at least sort of understood the significance of empathy and its importance. And I was also going into a field that was heavy counseling and empathy and compassion and that kind of stuff. So I really benefited from that in terms of my connections that I made and the people I was working with. I leaned on my wife pretty heavily, but I also was hesitant to do so because when I lean on my wife, typically I'm increasing her stress load as opposed to reducing it. And so I often don't lean on her because I don't want to add to her load. And so sometimes I'm carrying stuff on my own. And sometimes I'm trying to find someone else to talk to. And that I tried to go to counseling for a hot minute after my mom died. And I sort of, in talking to the counselor, I realized I was already doing all the things that I needed to do. So that didn't last very long. But my wife being able to sort of be patient with me and love me regardless of the struggles I was facing, and also giving me permission to have the struggles that I was having, that was really important. Her just saying, like, of course you're feeling depressed. Of course, you're supposed to. That permission took a lot of weight off my shoulders. And that's something I stole from her that I do with my clients now. I'm like, yeah, of course this is hard. It's supposed to be. You have ADHD. You're supposed to forget stuff. You're supposed to have trouble starting. But in terms of a social network, I have, I mentioned that I'm a geek, and I play Dungeons and Dragons once a month with some guys that I've known since college. And so that was a regular social connection that just kept going. And they listened to me when I needed to talk, and they supported me when I needed that. Also, it's a game that is all about achieving goals, so that let me at least pretend that I had some forward momentum going. And the stuff that I was exposed to through my kids was useful. We made some friends through their friends' parents and that kind of stuff. But I also was very intentional about trying to create a social network at that time. We had just moved here when all of this stuff kind of went down. We were just coming out of that period of parenthood where you're just isolated because you're a new parent. And then it was easier to start making social connections. And I was intentional about it. So that was useful. So some of why I was able to succeed was because I had an interest in psychological and sociological stuff and was doing that as a profession and actively seeking out sources of information around that and then applying it to better my position.
In the second episode of my podcast, I interviewed my husband. There was a time that he lost his job too, and he went through a really tough time. And while interviewing him, he said to me that one of the reasons why he really didn't share with some of his friends was because, he didn't feel like they had a solution. What's the point of just talking about it for the sake of talking about it? Like, then are they going to give me a job? I mean, what are they going to do that's going to make the thing different for me? So for him, it was like, I'm solution focused. If it's not going to be fixed, let's not talk about it.
Yeah. Can I jump in? Is that okay?
Yes.
There's more than one kind of solution. There are immediate solutions, right? Like my buddy can give me a job. And there's also seeds of solutions. If you're not talking to people, you're not planting seeds. If I talk to my buddy about how I lost my job and how I'm kind of scared about this, even though men aren't supposed to be scared. You totally are, and that's okay. Don't be mad. Being mad is dumb. But all of our emotions turn into anger, right? Because men are trained to not be vulnerable. And the only negative emotion that we have that doesn't make us feel vulnerable is anger, because anger makes you feel vulnerable. And so we typically flip all of our vulnerable emotions into anger. so that we can pretend that they're not there. You are vulnerable all the time, and that's okay. You're allowed to feel guilty about stuff. You're allowed to feel ashamed about stuff. You're allowed to feel nervous. You're allowed to feel scared. You're allowed to feel apprehensive and unsure. All of that is okay. And by sharing that with your friends, one, you're normalizing those emotions, which makes it easier for everybody. And two, in sharing those emotions and the reasons why you feel that way, you're planting seeds. Because if you say to your buddy, yeah, I've been unemployed now for 3 months and I'm starting to get kind of nervous about it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get another job. I don't know how this looks on my resume or whatever. Now your friend is worried about you. And that means that he might hear something and go, oh, that's a thing that might help my buddy. That might be able to get him a job.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, you're not the only one looking to help you out anymore. Other people are looking to help you as well. And yeah, it might not solve the problem right then and there, but you're planting seeds of success all over the place. And that's networking.
Planting seeds, you just defined solution focused as something completely different. So, being able to share that, and in the midst of that, you never know when that would germinate in someone else's heart. And it's not just you looking at the problem and trying to solve it. You have another eye on it.
Yep.
Talk about this ADHD stuff. Like you've mentioned this like many, many times. And I know that this is what you specialize in. Because ADHD is one of those things that sometimes can be really difficult to manage, and it is something that is chronic. It doesn't go away, and it can impact your relationship. It can impact pretty much everything. As somebody that has ADHD and also works in this field, how have you been able to manage that around your masculinity and your role as a man in whatever facet?
Permission and self-acceptance go a long way towards that, right? Like the more I learned about ADHD, the more I came to accept who I am and how I work, the easier it was for me to manage the anxiety that comes with ADHD. Because there was a time when if I double booked myself or if I couldn't find my phone, it filled me with anxiety and guilt and shame and, oh, I can't do it. What's wrong with me, right? Mm-hmm. But now I'm kind of like, yeah, no, of course I double booked myself. That's supposed to happen. And I might still have a wave of anxiety because one of the two people I'm supposed to be hanging out with is going to be disappointed, or because I have to cut both of those appointments short so I can do both of them or whatever the case may be. I might still worry about how I'm affecting someone else, but I'm not worrying about the fact that I did it because I'm going, nah, I've got ADHD. This was bound to happen at some point. It's been 2 or 3 months since I last double booked myself. Of course I double booked myself. Like it's about time. I'm a month overdue. And that playing that humor game, right? Like that makes it easier. Yeah. And also just knowing that it's a thing that is supposed to happen, right? Like I often use the metaphor of asthma because I also happen to have asthma. And I'll do a workshop and I'll fake an asthma attack at the beginning or in the middle. And then I'll apologize to everyone in the audience for being too lazy and unmotivated to breathe. And everyone laughs, right? Because that's ridiculous. You're supposed to not be able to breathe sometimes. You have asthma. It's okay. Why are you apologizing? And then I flip it on its head. And I'm like, yeah, but we completely judge folks with ADHD for being too lazy and unmotivated to do the dishes, finish the essay, turn in their TPS reports. But that's not what's going on. It's not about lazy. It's not about unmotivated. It's about ADHD. Like, I don't believe in lazy. Lazy is learned helplessness brought about by a lack of skills. And if we can figure out what skills are missing, we can start being more successful with ADHD because we understand why we're not doing the thing. And then we start to know what skills we need to do the thing, and it becomes easier to do it. It doesn't mean you're going to do it all the time, but at least you'll do it a little more often. With my clients, I go for 10% better. 10% better, 10% better, and recognize that ADHD is nothing if not inconsistent. So there's going to be days when you're 15% worse and days when you're 30% better. And that's okay. We want the average to be 10% better.
For real. I need to bring you back to talk about ADHD.
Yeah.
Especially for parents that deal with kids that have ADHD. I think that it starts from when they're young. And if parents can be able to demonstrate how to manage it and help them, it'll be easier when they get older rather
Yeah.
than them trying to fight it and struggle with it all their lives.
Yeah, that's cool. I can come back.
What advice would you give to a man right now that's listened to everything that you've said and says, "Oh, Brendan, that sounds really good. I don't know where to start. Where do I start today, right now? What one thing can I do differently today?"
You can redefine success for yourself. Well, two things. Pick one. I don't care which. But whichever one you pick to do first, do the other one second. Redefine what success looks like by, for now, lowering your standards. And then doesn't mean you don't increase them later, but lower them for now to something you can reach. And then up them slowly as time goes by until you're getting to the stuff that you think that you should be getting to right now. That's the only way to manage that gap between where you are and where you think you should be, is to build some scaffolding through the gap so you can get to where you want to be and be patient with when you get there. So one is redefine success. And the other is figure out what your strengths are. Stop looking at your weaknesses. The reason you think you suck is because you're always looking at your weaknesses. Look at your strengths. What are you amazing at? What are you pretty good at? That stuff matters, and start leaning into those strengths because that's where success lives. What's your skill stack? And how does your skills make you unique? And where do they point you?
Brandon, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful, and I know that it's going to impact a lot of people. So there's no other way to get a perspective of a man than from asking another man. So thank you so much for coming on Life, Love, and Therapy.
Yeah, thank you.